Originally in Spanish, 4th of February 2022.
Yesterday in my live, someone said to me, "You are creating a new religion and blaming humanity again." So I asked, who is to blame for what is happening on Earth, the Alpha Centauri? And someone told me that I could talk about blame and responsibility.
Yes. In that regard, yes. As an expanded topic, it would be very extensive. It is also possible. From one or another angle, it can be true, although it is not your intention to turn this into religion. Besides, true religions can only be created by the Cabal. The rest are just strange sects destined to fail. Blaming humanity, that is simplistic, coming from someone who has not analyzed the situation, which is very complex. And it takes a lot of mental resources to understand what is happening, because in the first place, humanity is undoubtedly a victim. But on the other hand, everything is created by them as individuals and as a collective. And they create it depending on their level of consciousness. But as far as what concerns us here, most humans think that the reason for anything is only one, when it is complex and convoluted. Yes, they are victims. It would be terrible not to accept that. So we are not accusing anyone in the sense that this person is referring to. But even so, they are to blame from the most expanded point of view. That phrase is already an idiom. And it is from that expanded point of view where everything is generated. Humanity still maintains a childlike mentality, in that they want everything to be solved for them. They don't want to take the responsibility to make their own decisions about basically anything. They are programmed that way by their own social dynamics. And that's a recipe for disaster, because that comfort of not bothering to think for themselves is conducive to manipulation, en masse and personal. But I mean more en masse at this point. And that breeds tyranny.
So whose fault is it from a terrestrial human point of view if humanity is the creator of its reality? They will have to take responsibility for their actions, won't they? But blaming others for one's actions is not very responsible.
Yes, from the point of view that you are asking, it is humanity's fault, directly. That's why you can't go in and save them like they want to be, because they would only generate the problem again later on, because it comes from them. To save them, using examples from the Bible, is to give a beggar a fish to relieve his hunger today, but tomorrow you won't be around to feed him. To let them learn, however they can, hard or not, to solve the problem they have created for themselves as a planetary people, is to teach that beggar how to fish. He will just take it upon himself to find his livelihood.
Yes, that would be the Federation's point of view. And what would be the reason for humanity being a victim? The fact that their perception is being guided without them realizing it? Is that why they are victims? But that is everyone's job, to awaken to this reality.
Yes, from a more surface point of view, what we care about in this case. These are individuals or more or less small groups more than anything. From the practical point of view, Each individual feels trapped in a loop or vicious circle where his condition is perceived as the fault of something or someone else. So a specific person will be a victim of circumstances, bad parents, bad bosses, or social injustices that have led him or her to be damaged. It is undoubtedly that everyone has been victimized by someone else and has received all kinds of injustices. It is abusive in that case to go and tell that individual that it is all their fault and that it is because their frequency made them compatible to those kinds of situations. Their perception is that a specific person or group of people has done them harm, and from their point of view, they are absolutely right. For example, the starseeds, with wisdom and knowledge of everything that happens, objectively are victims of the rest of the permissive, matrixified humanity. Of that there is no doubt. Because the ignorance and incapacity of the people in general is taking the starseeds toward the same destiny, because they are dragged in that direction. Behold, they are victims. However, from higher up, that was the plan of each one of those starseeds.
Yes, good point. I never saw it from that point. You are so right. Those of us who are against all of this are victims of the dominant frequency or the majority.
Yes. So for the vast majority of the starseeds, it's not fair to be told that they create their own reality. Because even if they know all this and the law of mirrors and all that, their perception, perfectly valid, is that they are all being pulled into a destiny that they clearly don't want.
Yes, I don't know why it didn't occur to me earlier to see it that point of view. We are being dragged down by that majority, but we are still the creators of this reality, and if you know that, you can reverse it.
The body itself, frequency equalizer, machine of limiting perceptions to a specific range in order to have limited experience, forces the starseeds, no matter how awakened they are, to feel more like victims. It is true that many starseeds have managed to forge a good life and a good future for themselves by moving to manifest what they desire. But today, with the global problem at hand, it basically affects everyone. And not all starseeds will be able to move to places that are more convenient to survive all this that is happening. Others, and the majority rather, are trapped in the problem. Being awakened, they cannot and do not want to play the social game. Therefore, they lack the economic resources of those who are in the social game of debt slavery work. Because most of the time, it is inversely proportional. That is, the greater the consciousness, the greater the rejection of work slavery debt. So they will have fewer resources to defend themselves in the matrix. And a person who is ignorant of what is happening and only focused on their work and accepting that life is like that, will have the economic resources, but not the wisdom. With exceptions, of course, there will be exceptions. But I'm talking here in blocks of what happens to most people, starseeds or not.
Yes, another very good point. But how do we get the sleeping people to listen to us?
That's the problem. You cannot. And you can't because in order for a person to listen to a conscious and wise starseed, that person needs to have a framework or a backing of prior knowledge that will serve as a basis for them to even begin to understand what that wise starseed wishes to communicate to them. Without that background, they will not be able to understand what the starseed is telling them. When a person is told anything, he or she draws on his or her personal database, what he or she understands as reality and the logical basis for that reality that he or she has. When the information received conflicts with their frame base of understanding, they simply perceive what they are being told as meaningless, crazy, and even silly.
I understand. It's like speaking different languages.
Yes, good example. They don't understand each other because they don't have the same database, meaning of each word, syntax of each language. And from this, I go on to say that each person enters ego depending on their level of consciousness, perception, frame of reference database. So from the perception level that they know, because no one perceives themselves as ignorant, they will not have the framework of understanding to be able to understand and accept that there will always be people who understand or who know more than they do. Then these kinds of people will see those below their level of consciousness and understanding as fools, and those above their level of consciousness and understanding as exaggerated madmen with theories that have no basis. They lack the ability to understand that people below their level of consciousness understanding do what they can and have no means of understanding them. It is not that they are stupid. They simply do not have the mental basis of consciousness to understand what they are being told. And they themselves lack the understanding necessary to comprehend those above them with more knowledge. Very few achieve this state to be able to accept both extremes from wherever one stands. So as one moves up the level of consciousness and understanding, there will be fewer and fewer people at their level, causing a greater feeling of loneliness and not fitting into society, which leads to resentment, bitterness, and sadness. That is why we insist that the only way to know the truth is to form your own personal reality, listening and studying all possible subjects without following anyone, taking self-responsibility for forming your own framework of reality. People with high consciousness have ideas. People with average consciousness have ideologies. Heraclitus.
I like that. I think Yashi once said it.
No, what Yashi said is from Socrates. Strong minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Weak minds discuss people. Socrates.